Well, look who's back at it. Ben Johnson, the man Lions fans have lovingly nicknamed the Snake, is once again digging through Detroit's old roster for spare parts, and this time has set his sights on a name that should make every Bears fan nervous, Marcus Davenport. According to reporting out of Chicago on Sunday, the Bears hosted free agent defensive end Marcus Davenport for a visit at Hollis Hall. This marks the first known interest in Davenport since he hit the open market back in March, and it comes as Chicago deals with a rash of injuries up front, including star pass rusher Montez Sweat working his way back from a nagging issue that's kept him out of practice. Beggars can't be choosers, and right now the Bears are begging. Before we get any further, Detroit Scope needs your help. We are closing in on 1,000 subscribers, and if you're new here, this is exactly the kind of content you're going to want to stick around for. Hit that subscribe button right now. It costs you nothing, it means everything to this channel, and it helps us keep bringing you this kind of coverage every single day. Okay, back to the chaos. Here's the thing about Marcus Davenport. If you've followed the Lions at all over the last 2 seasons, you already know his story, and it's not a pretty one. Davenport was the 14th overall pick by the New Orleans Saints back in 2018, a pick made, believe it or not, before the Baltimore Ravens even selected Lamar Jackson later that same night. Let that marinate for a second. A former top 15 pick, and yet every single article written about him this week has felt the need to soften the blow by leading with former first-round pick. That's not a compliment at this point. That's a warning label. Davenport spent his first 5 seasons in New Orleans under defensive coordinator Dennis Allen, who just so happens to be Chicago's current defensive coordinator. That connection is really the entire reason this visit is happening. Davenport had his best stretch of football with the Saints, including a 9-sack season in 2021 across just 11 games, and by most accounts his true career peak came in 2023 when he racked up career highs in tackles, quarterback hits, and sacks, again in a limited number of games. Notice a pattern yet? Because we sure did. After leaving New Orleans, Davenport signed with the Minnesota Vikings in 2023 and lasted 4 games before landing on injured reserve for the rest of the season. Then in 2024, Detroit brought him in, and it lasted 2 games before, you guessed it, another injured reserve stint ended his year. In 2025, Davenport actually managed to stick around for 8 games with the Lions, logging 14 tackles and a single sack. But even that stretch was interrupted by a lengthy absence with shoulder and pectoral injuries that knocked him out from Week 3 all the way through Week 12. Pro Football Focus reportedly ranked him near the bottom of qualified edge rushers league-wide last season. That is the player Chicago is now pursuing. Let's put some real numbers on this, because the tape doesn't lie and neither do the box scores. Davenport has not played a full 16 or 17-game season a single time in his 8 years in the league. Not once. The last time he even cracked 10 games in a season was back in 2022. Across his last 3 seasons combined, spanning stops with the Vikings, the Lions, and now this open market audition with Chicago, Davenport has appeared in roughly 16 total games out of a possible 51. That's not a rotational depth piece having a down year. That's a player who simply cannot stay on the field. And Bears fans deserve to know exactly what they might be signing up for. Now here's where this gets really fun for Detroit fans, because Marcus Davenport isn't walking into Chicago alone. He would be joining what has become an increasingly crowded reunion of former Lions players wearing Bears colors. A count from earlier this year found that former Detroit players made up roughly 7% of Chicago's entire roster once you included both the 53-man squad and the practice squad. That number climbed even higher after the Bears later added return specialist Khalif Raymond, pushing the share of former Lions on that roster into the high single digits, creeping toward 10% of the entire team. If Davenport signs, that number ticks up yet again. So the real question Bears fans need to start asking themselves isn't whether Marcus Davenport can help their pass rush. The real question is why their own head coach seems incapable of building a roster without constantly reaching back into Detroit's discard pile. Ben Johnson spent time on the Lions coaching staff before taking the Chicago job, and it genuinely looks like he's trying to recreate something familiar around him, one former Detroit player at a time. There's a version of this story where that's flattering to the Lions organization. There's another version where it just looks like a coach who can't move on. And look, we get it. Chicago is dealing with real problems up front. Sweat has been banged up, depth behind him is thin, and the front office doesn't have the cap space to go out and chase a real difference maker on the edge. Chicago reportedly sits with only a few $1 million in usable cap space this season, which rules out any kind of splashy trade or big-name free agent signing. That's exactly why a low-cost, high-name recognition option like Davenport becomes appealing on paper. He won't cost much more than a veteran minimum deal given his recent injury history, and there's at least some familiarity built in from his time under Dennis Allen in New Orleans. From a pure business standpoint, it's a low-risk flyer. From a Lions fan standpoint, it's an absolute gift. Because let's be honest about what everyone in Detroit is really thinking right now. If Marcus Davenport signs with Chicago, there is a very real chance he doesn't make it out of training camp healthy, let alone survive a full 16-game slate against the rest of the NFC North. Every Lions fan who watched him get hurt on the exact same play he recorded his only sack of the season last year knows exactly what they'd be signing up for. Pray to God the Bears sign him. Genuinely. Because every snap Marcus Davenport takes for Chicago is one less rep for a healthier player who might actually be able to hurt the Lions twice a year. This is also where Dan Campbell's fingerprints on this whole rivalry become impossible to ignore. Say what you want about the Lions' recent playoff heartbreaks, but Detroit has owned this division, and more importantly, Detroit has owned Chicago. Ben Johnson can win a division title, he can develop Caleb Williams into whatever version of a franchise quarterback is trying to build, but until he actually beats Dan Campbell head-to-head, none of it changes the hierarchy in the NFC North. Chasing former Lions role players in free agency isn't going to close that gap. If anything, it just keeps drawing a straight line back to Detroit as the standard Chicago is still trying to catch. We also need to talk about the timing here, because it says a lot. This visit comes just one day after Chicago's first preseason game, where their defense actually held up reasonably well against Cleveland, limiting the Browns to just 10 points and forcing a pair of interceptions. So this isn't a team in total crisis mode desperately searching for bodies. This is a coaching staff that watched a solid defensive performance and still felt compelled to bring in a familiar name with a well-documented injury history. That tells you something about how much value Ben Johnson personally places on continuity with players and coaches he already knows, even when the on-field results with those specific players have been inconsistent at best. Before we wrap this one up, seriously, if you haven't subscribed to Detroit Scope yet, now is the time. We are working hard to hit 1,000 subscribers, and every single one of you clicking that button gets us closer. This channel exists because of viewers like you showing up every day for Lions news, breakdowns, and yes, plenty of Bears jokes along the way. It genuinely means the world, and it's the best way to make sure you never miss a story like this one again. So where does this actually leave things? As of right now, nothing is signed. Davenport visited, he worked out, and the Bears are presumably still deciding whether the name recognition and defensive coordinator familiarity outweigh the very real injury risk sitting right there in the numbers. If Chicago does pull the trigger, expect the same tired former first-round pick framing to follow him around all over again, right up until the moment he lands on injured reserve for what would be the 4th time in 5 seasons. Lions fans have seen this movie before. We know exactly how it ends. At the end of the day, this is just another chapter in Ben Johnson's ongoing fascination with Detroit's old roster. Whether it's Khalif Raymond, whether it's the handful of other former Lions already suiting up in Chicago, or whether it's Marcus Davenport walking through the doors at Hollis Hall next, the pattern keeps repeating itself. And every time it does, it's just another reminder of exactly where the real standard in this division still lives, and it's not in Chicago. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you as always for watching Detroit Scope. This channel is made possible by viewers, subscribers, and members just like you, and it is because of your support that we get to keep doing this. If you're not subscribed yet, please help us hit that 1,000 subscriber mark. Drop a comment letting us know if you think Davenport actually signs with Chicago, and give this video a like before you go. Take care of yourselves and each other. Tell somebody you love them, and as always, go Lions.